Okay everyone, welcome to a video presentation on two-point perspective. So we are going to just find quickly the great geographic center of our picture plane here, and that's where I am going to draw my horizon line. And there we have it. And of course, as we discussed earlier in another video, horizon line is at eye level. Now we won't be needing those lines anymore. Okay. So what I'm going to do is establish two vanishing points instead of one, a right and a left vanishing point. And then I'm going to draw a vertical line. This vertical line is the beginning of a box that I'm going to draw. It is the front corner of it. Now that I'm using two vanishing points, all of my horizontal lines are now going to reference those two vanishing points. So I start from one, go to the top of that line, and go to the opposite vanishing point, and then on back around the same way. And as you can see, those give me guidelines along which to follow a trajectory in drawing my box. I'm just arbitrarily choosing where it ends, and I'm just following those to complete my box. Now right now it has, you can just see just the two sides of it, and they're going back in perspective. So now I've got four more spots, corners, from which I need to draw lines to the opposing vanishing point, similar to what we did in the one-point perspective process. And as they intersect each other, it tells us where the back corner of that box is going to be. And I'm sure if you look closely, you can tell that I'm slightly off. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to fudge a little bit. And my line where it started from and where it ended at did not start and stop precisely in the same locations. And so in the end, that back corner manifested as looking a little off. If it's really egregious, I try to retrace my steps and repair it, but otherwise I just fudge a little. So now I'm finding that corner of my box, and you're going to see me doing that a lot today. So now I'm just establishing that center of that plane, drawing that long line which will become just the long edge of a roof structure that I'm going to build. And that second vertical line, it's only going to go up as far as the line that sits above it. So now we're ready to draw in the roof line. One gable end accomplished. Second gable end going in. And there we go. So we have that showing up, and hopefully that's very clear to you how that process came together. So we've learned about horizon line, which is at eye level, vanishing points left and right, perspective guidelines, and finding the center of the plane. So now let's move on and let's build another structure. This first one straddled the horizon line. Now I'm going to draw this one so that it is above the horizon line, and its shape is going to look very different. And we're all just using just the same vanishing points, just moving them into different positions, and the buildings take on different shapes and configurations as a result. So it's a pretty fun process. I must confess, I think I kind of geek out and nerd out over perspective. As a teacher, when I was a student, I was not too fond of it. There we go. Sometimes I take a long time at each corner just to really make sure that that line is in the right spot where I want it to be. Remember to go to the opposite corner, the opposite vanishing point from which you're drawing your lines so that things crisscross, they intersect. And there you go. So in a previous video we did 1-point perspective, and like I said, this is 2-point perspective. And for the most part we see things sitting, at least architectural structures, we see them sitting in a different plane. So this one is a little out of context, but it's good to try and figure out how that works. And there we go. And there are the gable ends on that structure as well. Alright, so I want to draw one more. Only this time I'm going to let it straddle, or at least overlap, the first shape just a little bit. It's going to be below the horizon line, but it's going to overlap that first shape. So by now things should really be quite familiar to you, but hopefully seeing this repeatedly really nails down the process of how this happens. And once you get this process in your mind, you can use it to your advantage in your work as a visual artist. Now I did kind of let that come close to the other line of that other structure, but I think it'll still help illustrate and serve our purposes. Okay, again, need to find the center of those planes at the end. And you can do that even with the planes that I didn't put the X across. You can find the center of those planes if you wanted to as well. It's just a common skill to learn and understand and develop for yourself as a visual artist. Now this roof line, as long as it is below that horizon line, is going to be traveling upward towards that far left vanishing point. If I had extended it slightly above, then it would have been going downward. So you can think of the horizon line as it is your eye level, but it divides space for you. And it helps you to understand what is above you and your point of view and what is below you. Whether or not you feel you're looking up at it or looking down at it. And there we have the gable ends of that structure. So, now I do want you to do this with physical materials. I want you to use graphite pencils. I want you to use triangles, rulers, paper. Do this not digitally, but on paper so you can develop a more complete skill set. All right, so I've taken my father's house that he built back in 1969. Now I'm trying to follow the logic of the edges of his house. Now, I kind of know what's going to happen here, but I just kind of want to point it out to you. It really points out some of the limitations of photography, especially as we human beings are holding it in our hand, the camera in our hand, and maybe we're getting it as level as it should be, maybe not. But as you can see, things are not really lining up well. I mean, it comes to a quasi center vanishing point, but not really working. Let's see how the right side does. Yeah, things are not quite going to line up there either. Like I said, I kind of knew that would be the case. So I can't really trace a photograph in order to draw this house. So what am I going to do? Well, the next thing I can do really is establish the correct perspective. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So we learned that photography is limited. And we thought, you look at it, initially it looks logical, but when you really check it out, you find out it isn't quite so. And besides, this image has two horizon lines. You can't have two horizon lines. You only get one. Okay? So things to work on there. All right. So let's work on this. I established the left vanishing point and drew my lines to that. And that's what I'm going to work with for finishing out the drawing. Same way with the right vanishing point. And you can see where I've circled how the lines of my perspective are off from what the house is showing me. But I'm going to follow that carefully and correctly, trust the perspective, even though the photo was not true. So now I can start adding color and start erasing my helper lines, my perspective lines. And I can start to flesh this out to a more finished and completed work of digital art. And here we have the final piece that I put together for this presentation. So perspective is a servant to the needs of visual art. It helps us make sense of the things we're looking at, and some call it magic, but not really, right? All right, thanks for listening. Take care, and happy work with perspective to you.